Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is a three-way collaboration. On the home side, it is 1/3 Croatian, whereas on the away side, it's 1/3 Slovenian and 1/3 English. Now, out of these three breweries, the Croatian and Slovenian breweries have featured on the channel before. The Slovenian brewery I've done a few sit-down reviews for, and the Croatian brewery I actually visited and filmed an out and about video when I was down there last year. But the English brewery is one that I have never heard of before and never encountered. So this should be quite interesting. But the beer itself is a style that I very much enjoy, one that I don't get to review all that often on the channel though, unfortunately, and if memory serves me correctly, this is a beer that I received from a certain Davor Šireč, who is the OG beer mule for Rampant Lion Reviews. So a massive shout out and thank you to him for making this one possible. But yeah, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for the home side of things then, we are going to head down to Croatia. We're going to go to Zagreb to be specific, and that means that we're going to have a look at my first beer, or my first sit-down beer on the channel I should say, from Pulfer Brewery. So this particular beer is called Lost Vicar. It comes in at 9.7% ABV, and this one is a quadruple. It's brewed in collaboration with Omnivar Brewery, who are from Ljubljana over the border in Slovenia, and Street Brewery, who are from Hackney Bridge in London. But yeah, as I've mentioned on the channel many a time before, I'm a huge fan of the Belgian style quadruples, and to review a Croatian one I think is pretty interesting. I think we've had one from Slovenia before if memory serves me correctly, but we've had this style from a good number of countries over the years. But like I say, a huge thank you to Davor for making this review possible, and I'm sure you'll see more Davor beers featuring on the channel as time goes on. But let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you do want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. You can find all the usual links in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done involving Pulfer Brewery and Omnivar Brewery, and my future reviews that we'll do from Street Brewery. Very first time they're featuring on the channel as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So yeah, just go in there, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Croatian, Slovenian and English playlists, and those are being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and you can of course check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. But let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries before we taste the beer. We'll start off with Pulfer Brewery then, since these guys are the home brewery in this case. So, Pulfer Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, and the company was founded back in 2016 by four friends. This is Matej, Darko, Voje and Ozren. So back in around 2013, the friends were home brewing together every Sunday at Matej's mother's garage, using the same pots that she used to cook. Apparently she was a very good cook. But they started brewing pale ales and gradually developed the recipe, and they invited their friends over to taste the beers and asked for their thoughts, and they just kept going this way. But after this, they started to brew IPAs and stouts, among other styles, and after home brewing together for about 2 years, they entered their beers into the Zagreb home brewing competition and actually did very, very well. And this pushed the four friends to quit their day jobs and found their own company together, and needless to say, it went quite well for them. So in 2016, they found a location in the Varaždin area, and they began brewing their pale ale commercially, and it went well. And about a year after this, they moved to another space in Sakovic, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which they shared with another brewery, and there they started to brew a few more different styles. But they later got their own facility in the Žitnjak area in the southeast of the city, where they're still based today, and over the last few years they've been building up the infrastructure of this brewery. But in May of 2021 they started to can their beers, and they've begun to export them a bit more widely across the European continent now. But the name Pulfer is taken from the bumper of the old Zagreb trams, where some people used to ride for free, and they quite like this kind of punk culture, if they like. They say that's kind of what they want to embody in their brewing. And as of May 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 80 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and it is Darko who is the head brewer. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about my about Pulfer Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But hopefully we can review a few more beers from these guys going forward, because the ones that I tried in my out and about video were certainly very, very nice. But yeah, let's go on then to the Slovenian side of things, and a Pivovar Omnivar, or Omnivar Brewery, however you want to refer to them. But Omnivar, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Ljubljana, the Slovenian capital, and the company was founded back in 2017 by two homebrewers. This is Miha Kovac and Jure Vešligai. Again, I really hope I'm pronouncing these names correctly, probably not. But Miha came from a background as a veterinary doctor, while Jure studied geography, and he left the company early on to work for a beer factory in Switzerland, but then also worked at Tectonic in Ljubljana as well. But the name of the brewery is twofold. So Omni comes from Latin, meaning everything, whereas Var comes from the Slovenian word for brewery, Pivovar, and so it means that they brew every style. But they want to do a lot more collaborations with other breweries in the future. They have been building up their recipe development over the last wee while, and today they're producing around 550 litres of beer, 550 hectolitres of beer per year apparently, and as of May 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 20 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and I think we've reviewed 2 or 3 of them here on the channel actually. But that's everything I can really tell you about Omnivar. So again, if you want to learn more about these guys, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done too. But yeah, let's go on to the third and final brewery then, to the English side of things. So, Old Street Brewery are based in Hackney in East London, and this company is currently owned by Adam Green from Arizona, and also Andreas Wegelius, who is from Finland. But the history of this brewery goes back to 2013, when some of the staff from the Queen's Head pub near King's Cross started to brew their own beer under the name Against the Grain. But after a period of experimentation and recipe development, they were able to produce consistent beers on a very small 1 hectolitre kit, and these were sold in the pub. But a little bit later on, in October of 2016, Adam and Andreas, who were 2 members of staff from Mother Kelly's Beer Bar, took over the brewing duties, and they renamed the brewery Old Street Brewing after the flat in which they had begun home brewing together a few years previously. It's just quite confusing apparently, because the brewery has never actually been based in Old Street. But in May of 2017, the brewing activities at the pub were stopped, and the brew kit was relocated to a railway arch in Bethnal Green in May of 2018, where it was adapted to double its capacity. But they also opened a tap room at this site, and then replaced the small kit a year later with a 10 hectolitre kit that was purchased from Pressure Drop Brewing. But they added a second site in late 2020 when they moved to a larger premises in Queen's Yard, and this also hosts a tap room and a live music venue. But they continued to brew in Bethnal Green as well until November of 2021, when they shut this site down, and over the last kind of year or two they've just been trying to kind of stay afloat after the COVID pandemic. But they're known for the quality of their beers apparently. They're very good from what I've heard, so I guess this is some place I will need to check out the next time I'm in London. But as of May 2023, these guys have produced around 160 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and they seem to do a wide variety of different styles. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Old Street Brewery. If you want to learn more about these guys, again, you can check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages too to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that concludes a little bit of a longer brewery history section for this video, since we had 3 breweries involved. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a look at this beer itself. I've been wanting to try this one for a good little while. But yeah, there you can see Lost Vicar in this one. You can see there's a nice map there pointing out Zagreb, Ljubljana, and also London in there. You can see the symbols for the 3 breweries on the side of this bottle there as well, and it has got a wax top on it. I had to knock some of the wax off so I could actually get it open for the video, so we'll need to see how that goes. But like I mentioned earlier, this one is a 9.7% Belgian Quadrupel, a Belgian dark strong ale as they're calling it here. You can actually see one thing I would want to point out about Pulfer. You can see the sort of tram coupling there on this one, which I think is really quite nice. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. Very curious about this beer. Yeah, and the wax is all falling off now. So yeah, you can see that hasn't gone very well. But I think it is just a plain black bottle cap with this one. But yeah, let's get the beer out into the glass and see what it's all about. It's behaved quite nicely actually. Sometimes these quadruples and triples and things like that, especially when they're from small breweries, they can behave a little bit strangely and sometimes explode. So yeah, this one has actually behaved alright, I have to say. But yeah, there we go. Let me just get rid of that little bit of wax that was stuck to the side of the glass there. So yeah, anyway, it does look pretty damn nice, this one, and pretty much what you would expect from a quadruple. We poured this one very, very lightly though, so of course it's not going to have much in the way of a head to it unless we sugar it up a wee bit. So yeah, anyway, you can see there is a little bit of a foamy ring just around the edge of the glass there, but it's a very light sort of fawn colour that comes out of this one. So yeah, just like to have a wee quick look at that. A very light sort of fawn coloured foamy ring around the edge of the glass there. So yeah, it looks very nice. Yeah, so the head, obviously there's just a few wispy bits sitting on top of this one and that ring around the edge of the glass. Nothing else we can really say about that, to be honest with you. But in terms of the colour, of this beer then, it's got a lovely kind of dark chestnut mahogany type note to it, this one, which is typical of the Belgian Quadrupel. Now remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour of this one too. And when it comes to Belgian beers, you have to remember that quite often they will put a little bit of rock candy or something like that into them, and that's one of the reasons why Belgian beers very often have quite a high alcohol content but still quite a light mouthfeel in comparison to the things like the American Imperial Stouts and so on. It's because they add this sugar in the secondary, for the secondary fermentation phase. But yeah, the colour of this one will most likely be down to the kinds of malts that have been used, probably to a degree the type of sugar as well. But yeah, overall it does look pretty nice, this one. There's a few little sediment particles floating around in this one. I'm not sure exactly how long I've had this beer, I should point that out as well, but with quadruples you don't really have to worry about that too much, to be honest with you. These beers can sit and mellow out a little bit as time goes on. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look very, very nice. Yeah, I like that about this one. So yeah, don't think there's anything else we need to say about the appearance of this beer. Nothing particularly unusual about it considering the style. Let's have a wee look at the aroma then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Oh yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this does smell pretty good and pretty authentic. Now the Quadrupel, it's a style that's quite difficult to get right actually. And I've had some really nice examples. I think the most unusual one I had recently was from a brewery in Romania, and they did a really good job of it as well. But this one, I have to say, smells pretty damn good. And you know, Omnivar, from what I remember, their beers had a little bit of a kind of Belgian yeasty type character to them. And I tried a few different styles from Pulfer when I went to visit the brewery, and all of them were really quite good and true to style. So I'm not surprised that this one's going to be pretty nice. And when I was reading about Old Street Brewery, these guys do quite a lot of different things as well and do them very true to style. So I'm not surprised, to be honest with you, that this one comes across as authentically as it does. But it gives you a bit of everything you want from the style. The big brown sugars with a bit of dryness and a bit of sweetness. There's a little touch of hoppy character there, and you've also got that nice little bit of fruitiness as well. So a wee bit of everything going on in this one that you would expect of a Belgian quadruple. So yeah, aroma-wise, this is very, very nice actually. Yeah, so where do we start with this one? Yeah, for me, like I say, it gives you a bit of everything you want. We'll start with the backbone of this beer. As I said, the first thing you'll get out of this one, it almost has a little bit of kind of woodiness in the backbone there. So it has this little bit of an almost kind of smooth, oaky type character. But above that, you get a little bit of like a kind of fresh, brown bready bread crust in there. And then you have little bits of, there's a little touch of kind of nutty character as well, but not too much. But then there's a sort of mix of brown bready and kind of almost sponge cakey character coming out of this one, which I really do quite like as well. So for me, the kind of brown bready, cakey type notes that you get out of this beer are really interesting. It's like a brandy soaked sponge cake, or like a fruit, like a bready fruit loaf or something like that. So yeah, lots and lots of that going on. So we've got a woody base, a little bit of a kind of almost bread crusty note there, potentially like a little bit of a sweet caramelised rye bread as well, and then you get the sweeter like sponge cakey. You've got the lighter sponge cakey. The lighter sponge cakey note coming out of it, and like I say, that sponge cakey character smells like it's been brandy or cognac soaked or something like that. So aroma wise, this is really, really very nice. And like I say, on top of that, you have a little bit of, as I say, you've got a little bit of nutty character in there, but above that, you start to get the brown sugars out of this one. So you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of oily, kind of leathery brown sugar coming out of this. There's a sweeter caramel in there as well. There's a little bit of like a McVitie's digestive biscuity type quality. And yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice as well. There's a few nutty kind of elements coming out of this beer too, as I say, which is quite nice. But the brown sugars have got quite a little bit of complexity to them. Usually when you have a leathery character like this, it's an indicator of a slightly longer wort boil. I'm not sure if that is the case in this one, but this beer, it is one of the darker quadruples that I've come across in recent times. Sometimes they can be very light and bright and sort of mahogany, chestnutty type colour, or they can be a more kind of dark, kind of sort of rosewoody type colour, such as this one. So maybe it's had a slightly longer wort boil. But the brown sugars, as I say, have a little bit of leathery character to them. There's a good little bit of an oily sweet caramel in there as well. There's a bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit. And yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice. Yeah, aroma wise, it's good. It really is quite good with this one. Yeah, lots of stuff coming out with this one, I have to say. So on the yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the kind of malty side of things, to be honest with you. The only other thing I would add is that there's maybe a little bit of honey or honeycomb or something like that, but I think we're going to get a wee bit more complexity out of this beer when we actually drink the thing. But in terms of the hoppy character of this beer, remember, quadruples are not the most hoppy of beers, but you're still getting a little bit of green component out of this one. For me, there's a little touch of earthiness in there. There's a little bit of herbal character. Nice little bit of floral aromaticity and also a wee bit of grassiness too. Yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice. So yeah, I think that most of the thing is with this one, I'm not, as I say, I'm not so sure how long I've had this beer, so quite a little bit of the hoppy character will have dropped out of it. But I do still get a good little bit of grassiness and floral note in there. Then you've got the fruity side of things as well, which I do quite like. And yeah, it's interesting with that one. On the fruity side of the beer, it's kind of what you'd expect from the style. There's a little bit of a kind of raisiny sharpness in there, definitely some nice juicy plums as well, but you've got the drier fruits too, a little bit of the kind of prune, a little bit of the date, some sultana, some oily pears, then you've got a bit of black currant and blackberry coming out of this one as well. Yeah, the way that this goes together is really quite nice actually. So yeah, I do like the way that this beer goes together. It's very authentic for a quadruple. It's got a little bit of a sharper fruity character to it, this one, compared to some of the other ones I've had. But yeah, but just going by the aroma, it seems to be very authentically done. But yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them. But I think it is about time we try this one. So yeah, this is the Lost Vicar, a 9.7% Belgian style quadruple from Omnivar Brewery in Zagreb, in collaboration with, not Omnivar, from Pulfer Brewery in Zagreb in Croatia, brewed in collaboration with Omnivar, Pivovar Omnivar from Ljubljana in Slovenia, and Old Street Brewery from London. So let's get stuck into this one. Slanje, skål, na zdravje, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty nice actually. First impression of this one, it's quite light in its mouthfeel for a quadruple, but it's also one of the more kind of dry examples that I've had of this style. This beer's got a lot of dryness in it, but the dryness, if you let the dryness evolve on the palate, it shows you the flavour elements that you would kind of expect of this style, but certainly not one of the sweeter quadruples that I've come across actually. I thought from the aroma it would be a little bit sweeter than it is, but it's still good, it's nice. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really really nice in that sense. The more, when you take another sip of it, it really does sweeten up. So maybe it's just the first initial sip of this one that is a little bit more kind of heavy and dry and things like that. It does give you a little bit of a kind of punch in the chest, this one, but it's nice. It's a good beer. So thumbs up to all three breweries involved in this one. Yeah. So let's just break this beer down and describe it for you a little bit more in depth, as we always do. So middle third of the palate, backbone of the beer. Yeah, you do have a little bit of an almost dry, woody backbone to this one, but then on top of that, you have a nice little bit of a kind of, kind of rye bready, brown bready bread crust. So yeah, there's a little bit of a rye bready bread crust in there. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of woody backbone. The rye bready bread crust sits on top of that. And then you can feel there's this sort of like layer of kind of caramelised rye bread with a little bit of nuttiness in there too, which is good. And yeah, above that you start to get the kind of softer, bready and almost kind of cakey notes out of the beer. So yeah, above the kind of caramelised rye bread you have this layer, and it's almost a little bit wholemeal brown bready. But then above that you've got another layer which is like a kind of sponge cakey type note, to be honest with you. It's not too cakey, but just a little bit. You have this layer of kind of sponge cakey type flavour, and it's a little bit more of a It's got a little bit of a more kind of like brandy or cognac soaked type vibe to it, this one. So yeah. Yeah. So you have that more, as I say, yeah, you have that more kind of, the sort of sponge cakey layer in this one. It's very much like just brandy, yeah, very kind of brandy soaked or cognac soaked or something like that. Then above that you start to get the brown sugary notes out of this beer, which are what you would kind of expect of a quadruple. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you have at the back of that middle third of your palate, sorry, you can feel it's almost like there's a very toasty and dry brown sugary note to this one, but it kind of mellows out as you come further forward toward the front of that middle third of your palate, and it gives you a wee bit of a more kind of it really gives you a little bit more of a I would say, yeah, it gives you a little bit more of a kind of leathery brown sugary type character, actually. So yeah, you've got that, a bit of a roasty, toasty, dry brown sugar at the back of that middle third of your palate, more leathery and dry as you come further forward. On top of that, you can feel there's a layer of like a kind of crisp, toasty caramel. Then in the dead centre of your palate, you've got an oily circle there, where you've got you have this kind of big oily sweet caramel. Then in the dead centre of your palate, you have a little bit more of that kind of straight up, highly caramelised treacle molasses type thing coming out of this one. So yeah. So, yeah, the way that goes together is quite interesting, actually. Like I say, this quadruple in the middle of the palate, it shows you quite a little bit of dryness, but then the further into the aftertaste, that you go with this beer, the more sort of sweetness and stuff that you get out of this one. So yeah, I do like how this goes together. In terms of that, it's very nice. So on the on the back third of your palate, then with this one, I think we've covered everything we need about the middle third of your palate. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in this one. It's got a little bit, it's kind of like a mix of like rye bread in the bottom and then a bit of a sweeter brown bread on top. But yeah, it's got a wee bit of graininess to it. But on the back third of the palate, the layers are quite similar, but as I've always said, you get more dry and bitter flavours further back on the palate, and the sweeter flavours come out further forward. So with this one, you have the kind of woody base that I was talking about there, that's there, but it's a little bit drier. Then you get the kind of rye bread crusty character there sitting above that, which again is a bit drier. And you've got a taller, then you've got a little bit of a taller kind of caramelised rye bready character, a little bit lighter and more airy. Then you've got the wholemeal brown bready character in there again, which is a little bit drier, but yet again more tall and airy. And then you have that kind of slightly sweeter, cakey type quality, just sitting above that too. So yeah, the way this goes together, I think, is quite interesting. You've got the same layers on that back third of your palate, but just more tall and airy. But then above all of that, you have this the dry kind of roasty, toasty brown sugar character that I was talking about. That creeps over the top of the kind of yeasty character in there, which goes together really nicely. But above everything else, you have the yeasty character coming out of this beer, and the yeasty side of this one's quite interesting. So let's just look at that. So Above that, you have a little bit more of, as I say, you've got that more kind of yeasty character coming out of this one. And then the yeasty notes in this beer, it's like a light kind of farmhousey brown bread, but it's also got a little bit more graininess and dryness to it. A little bit of honeycomb mixed in with it too. I always seem to get honeycomb in the yeasty notes on the back third of the palate too. But yeah, it's quite interesting. Definitely back third of the palate, the flavour feels taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, that's interesting stuff. In terms of the I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer then. So let's go on to the hoppy side of things. Back corners of the palate, well, actually, generally speaking, you do still get a little bit of hoppy character out of this one, which I'm surprised about. Like I say, I don't know exactly how long I've had this beer, but still, quadruples will last for a good little bit of time. But anyway, you get a good little bit of earthiness in there on the back corners of your palate. I'm guessing that potentially they've used some kind of Slovenian hop in this one, actually. But yeah, good little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, there's a little touch of herbal character, and then you've got a good little bit of floral aromaticity just kind of pushing its way out of this one as you reach the front corners of the palate. But round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more. Grassy, and then yeah, you can feel there's a little bit of grassy zestiness coming out of this beer too. So yeah, I like how that goes together. So yeah, there is a little bit of green component to this one there, and I'm surprised at how kind of prominent it is as well, actually. It's interesting, but it builds a good bridge with the slightly kind of drier character that this beer has. So yeah, let's have a little look at the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up in there again. As I said, you can feel that. It's got a little bit of dryness and kind of rye bready character to it. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more smooth and woody. So you've got a little bit of that there. You've got a little bit of the kind of roasty rye, kind of bread crust and rye bread on top of it. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at that. So, at the back of that front third of your palate then, you get a little bit of a kind of juicy plummy character out of this one. But then underneath that you get the drier prunes and a little bit of date, and then you get some kind of sultanas, dry white green grapey characters there in the base. But then as you move further forward with this one, you get a little bit of a juicy kind of red fig, then you get an oily pear as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate. And as you push into the front half of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit, there's a little touch of blackcurrant in there. I don't know if I would go quite as far as saying blackberry with this one. I would be tempted more to say it's like an oily, blackcurranty character that comes out of this beer. So yeah, the way that that goes together is really quite nice with this one. So yeah, I like how that. Yeah, I really do like how that pieces together. Actually, the fruity character in this one, it's quite wet, and generally speaking, this is a slightly lighter bodied quadruple than I've come across before. But the flavour profile in this one is pretty authentic, and it's certainly one of the kind of drier notes. But the fruity character for me is a little bit more unique, I would say. But yeah, I think we've said everything we really need to about the flavour profile of this beer. So we can round off on that note. We should round off with the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, it's kind of between mid-bodied and top end of mid-bodied. It's kind of somewhere in there. Like I say, it's a bit lighter than some quadruples that I've come across before. It's got not much in the way of carbonation with this one. It's actually quite smooth. It has a little bit of it has quite a clean mouthfeel to it as well, in fairness, which I find quite interesting. In terms of IBUs and stuff like that, I feel this one does have a wee bit of dryness and bitterness. It wouldn't surprise me if this beer had something like 30-ish IBUs or 25 IBUs, something in that region. The malt base, like we said, has a bit of dryness, it's got a bit of smoothness and a bit of sweetness, but the sweetness comes out in the aftertaste as a more kind of dry characteristic. The fruity notes in this one are kind of wet. The fruity notes in this one are kind of wet, and then yeah, you've got that nice kind of juicy, fruity character that comes out of it as well. The fruity notes in this one for me are quite unique. But yeah, quite an interesting quadruple, this one. It goes about its business in a slightly different way, but yeah, definitely cool to try my first Croatian brewed Belgian style quadruple. And Omnivar, of course, as I say, they're out of the three breweries here, they're probably the ones that are best known for their kind of Belgian type beers. But yeah, I've enjoyed this one, I have to say that, and definitely cool to feature all three of these breweries on the channel together. Two of them completely new in terms of sit-down reviews here on Rampant Lion Reviews too. But yeah, solid quadruple, this one. One of the more dry examples that I've come across within this particular style category. But I think we can leave it at that for this one. So this was the Lost Vicar, a 9.7% quadruple, brewed at Pulfer Brewery in Zagreb in Croatia, in collaboration with Omnivar Brewery from Ljubljana in Slovenia, and Old Street Brewery from Hackney Bridge in London. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Pulfer, Omnivar and Old Street are, and we will see about returning to all three of these breweries again at some point in the very near future. But until then, slàinte, skål, cheers, na zdravie, and I'll see you guys in the next review.